Hey everyone, so I am finally able to make this video without crying or just really being upset. I had a very crazy experience after giving birth to my 6th baby back in August, and I wanted to make this video today to warn other pregnant women about the possibility of this happening to them so that nobody else has to go through what I went through. So, like I said, I just had a 6th baby back in August. You may hear a little bit of background noise because all the kids are out there with dad right now. But I've always had like good births, good birth stories, nothing traumatic has happened, and baby number 6 came at 36 weeks, which kind of surprised us all, but she came out totally healthy. She never had to go to the NICU. I had no complications. Everything was going good. We did have a hospital birth, and I've always had hospital births, but this particular time was a little bit different. So, as you know, if you give birth to a baby, the baby has to stay 24 hours, as do you, for the doctors to monitor you, and then you can generally leave. So the day after she was born, my husband and I were under the assumption that we were going to get to go home. All 5 of our kids were with my in-laws, and they were so ready to meet their baby sister because with COVID, they weren't allowed to come to the hospital. We had survived a pandemic birth. Everything was going good, or so we thought. So the pediatrician came in that day to kind of check the baby. And after she checked the baby and the baby was all good, she looked at me and she said, "Did you by chance take any pain medication when you were pregnant?" And I said, "No." And she was like, "It's really weird because your initial urine that you gave at triage came back positive for narcotics." But then I looked at the family name and I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. My pediatrician knows me very well. Obviously, I have 5 other kids. The entire pediatric group knows me very well because I've been there quite a bit with 5 kids. So she saw the positive narcotics, like drug screening, and then saw the family name and was like, "That's weird." And I was like, "Yeah, I definitely didn't take anything." And she was like, "It's probably just a false positive, don't worry about it." Okay. So we kind of just like snuggled the baby, enjoyed that, first full day with her. We were kind of in that like newborn bliss, expecting to go home. And then one of the OBs in my practice came in and checked me, and she said, "Although everything looks good, I think where the baby came so early, we're just going to keep you an extra night." Okay, I didn't really think anything of it. Honestly, when you have so many kids at home, staying at the hospital is kind of like a vacation, so I didn't really like push to go home. I was like, that's fine, no big deal. So later that night, my nurse came in, and I made a good connection with all of my nurses. Like, I always really try to get to know them, make sure that they know that they are super appreciated. I try not to be like a very needy patient, etc. I'm just kind of like normal, just chit-chatting, getting to know them. So I kind of got to know this nurse at this point. And she came in and she let it slip to us that the reason that we did not get to leave that day was because I had a second positive drug screening. So my body was showing that I was positive for narcotics, specifically morphine. Now, I was super naive. I thought that morphine was something that you just got at the hospital if you were in an immense amount of pain. I didn't know what morphine was used for. I had no clue. Because a little bit of backstory about me, I've kind of always just been like a goody two-shoes. Like, I've never really dabbled into anything. In high school, I was the one that would like go to the parties and like hang out with people, and I would be the DD. And I had, I did drink a little bit in college and stuff like that, but like I've never like dabbled into anything dangerous or hardcore, and I am very oblivious when it comes to like the drug world. So she told me that that's why they kept me, because of protocol. So she said that the next step was essentially when the baby's born, they always test the baby's cord blood. And she was like, the cord blood will probably come back clear. But she said the weird thing is your body is not just showing that you're positive for morphine, but it's showing an astronomical number positive for morphine. She was like, but talking to you, like, I don't see any clear signs that you've ever been on drugs. Looking at the baby's not showing any signs of withdrawal. She was like, it's probably fine, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention that that's what's going on. So Nick and I were kind of like baffled at this point, and we're like, what in the world? And we kind of like, I don't want to say we laughed it off, but we kind of did at first because I knew that I had never done drugs. I actually survived quarantine with 5 kids, homeschooling them without a sip of wine. Like, that's like while being pregnant. Like, that's how much I don't do drugs. But so we kind of like, I was Marco Poloing a few of my friends, letting them know what was going on, and like all of their first responses were, "You? Of all people?" I'm like, I know, right? And I like was calling my sister and talking to her about it, and we all just assumed that come morning everything would be fine. So we wake up the next day. This is like after night 2, and anybody who's had a baby knows that night 2 is so hard because they want to cluster feed, you don't get any sleep, so you're just like exhausted. So the next morning, my pediatrician came in like early in the morning, and she looked at me and she was like, "Sarah, we have a problem." I'm like, "What?" And she was like, "The cord blood came back positive for the same thing, for morphine." She was like, "And due to hospital protocol," she was like, "I am not allowed to release the baby to leave until after 72 hours because we have to watch the baby for withdrawal." She was like, "And not only that, but I now have to get social services involved." And I don't even know what my face did in that moment. I don't know what my body did. I just remember sitting there like feeling like it was like an outer body experience. I was like, "What?" And she was like, "I know." She was like, "I know that you're not on drugs." She was like, "And I'm actually going to leave this room and I'm going to go through all of your medical history and try to figure out what could have caused this." Because the thing is, the hospital that I deliver at, I also have an OB through the same hospital. My kids also go to a pediatrician through the same hospital group. So literally our entire medical history is in their computer database. So she told me she was going to leave. She was going to go like look up things that could possibly cause this. She was going to try her best to figure out what was happening because she knew that it was not true. She did say that my husband and I could be released at that point, but the baby couldn't come. And obviously I was like, "Well, you're talking about getting social services involved. Like, I'm not leaving this hospital bed. Like, I'm sitting here with my baby. We're not leaving." And she was like, "I totally understand." So she leaves. I just start like crying because I'm like, what is even happening right now? Like, I don't do drugs. I can tell them until I'm blue in the face that I don't do drugs. But if all of my labs are coming back positive, then like, I mean, they're gonna believe the science. Like, they're not gonna believe me because I'm sure every person that ever has this happen says, "Oh, I don't do drugs." So my husband at this point is like livid. Like, I don't think I've ever seen him that mad. And he wasn't mad at me, he was mad at what was happening. He was mad that he knew that I wasn't on drugs and all these labs were coming back positive, and they're saying we can't leave with our baby. They're saying we can't leave the hospital and take our baby. So he immediately like gets on the phone with our lawyer, and our lawyer is kind of like walking us through like next steps. If it comes to this, this is what I want you to do. He also called our friend who is a doctor and was like, "Hey, do you know anything that could cause this?" So our friend that's a doctor is looking up things while all this is happening. My pediatrician's looking up things. I'm just sitting there like a sobbing, crying mess because like, I just had a baby, I'm hormonal. You're telling me that my body's showing that I'm positive for drugs, like it's testing my character. I was just like broken at that point. That's the only way I can explain it. So I just literally sat there and held the baby and cried. So the nurse comes back in, she's talking to me. She was like, "I know." She was like, I don't see any signs. She was like, "But we have to follow protocol." Which I will say, I appreciate that the hospital does have a protocol for babies who actually need it. I do appreciate that, and I know why it's put into place. But in a situation like mine, it was very difficult because I knew they had to follow protocol, but at the same time I was like, so during this time, Blair was having issues latching onto my left side, and it was very painful, and I had a history of like cracking in the beginning, so I wanted lactation to come in, and I hadn't seen lactation yet, and I thought that was weird, but I assumed that it had to do with COVID. So I asked the nurse, I was like, "Can lactation come in and see me really quick? I want them to check the latch." And she was like, "Actually, they can't, because right now you're technically like a drug mom." Like, I don't know what the medical term that they use, but I was like basically flagged as lactation, could not come see me. So at that point I just started crying again because I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I am not on drugs. Like, my baby is safe. I am not on drugs. She was born at 36 weeks. She's like totally healthy. So I just started crying, and my nurse was like, I can call your pediatrician, and if your pediatrician clears you for lactation to come, they can come. So she called my pediatrician. My pediatrician did allow lactation to come see me, thank God. So they helped me with that, whatever. I think I cried through the whole time they were in there, because I'm thinking like, oh, they see on paper that I'm a drug mom. Like, I'm not, you know. Anyways, so fast forward maybe like another hour, and social services comes through my door. Now, as a parent, you never want to have social services come talk to you. You never want to like have to face that reality. So when social services comes in to talk to you, it is really like your heart's beating, because you know that like you're essentially at their hands. Like, I mean, like, what can I do? So she comes in and she's talking to me, and she was like, well, the problem is once we get 3 positives, our protocol is we have to get CPS involved. So then it escalates from the very beginning, oh, it'll probably, the cord blood will be negative, to, okay, you have 3, now I can't release the baby and social services has to come. Then social services comes and they're telling me we have to get CPS involved. And at that moment, like, I remained calm through all of this, because in my mind, all I could think was, okay, if they think you're on drugs, you can't let your body like freak out. Like, you can't freak out, because then they're gonna really think you're on drugs. Like, so like stay calm, stay true to your character, reason and talk with them, and maybe it will help. So I was crying, like I was like hysterically sobbing at this point, but I looked at her and I was like, look at me. I was like, you need to look at me and look at me in my eyes. Like, I am not on drugs. I do not do drugs. I have never dabbled in like hardcore drugs. And I don't know what is in my system that is showing that I am positive for these things. I would love to know. I was like, but I am not on drugs. Like, here's the iron supplement that I took throughout pregnancy. I took Unisom. I took B6. Like, I went to the dermatologist and had a wart removed. Like, I'm literally going through like anything and everything that I like touched during pregnancy to her. And I'm like, listen to me, I am not on drugs. Like, please do not take it that far. Like, my kids have a healthy, happy home. Like, there's no reason for it to escalate this far. And Nick, meanwhile, is like literally like dialing our lawyer as social services is in there. Like, he is just like beyond mad, like, at this point. So thank the Lord God that this lady, I guess, really saw in my face that like I was being truthful, because she said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. She was like, we don't normally do this, but since you seem like you're totally like not on drugs, and your pediatrician's attesting for you and all your nurses are attesting for you, I'm going to leave this room, and before I get CPS involved, I'm going to go down to pharmaceutical. We're going to go through all of the medications, supplements, food, etc. that you said that you had during this pregnancy, and we're going to try to find a cause. If pharmaceutical and I can find a cause that we believe made this happen, then we will not get CPS involved. And so I was like, thank you. And she was like, this could take a few hours. I'm like, that's fine, like, thank you. So she leaves. Nick's pacing the floor. Like, he is a nervous wreck. He's like so upset. I'm still like in a broken state, just like crying. Like, I even think I told social services, like, you are stealing my joy right now. Like, I just had a baby. Like, I just want to be joyful, and like this whole situation's stealing my joy. I think I even said like I should have had a home birth. Like, and that's like totally not my prerogative, because normally like I am one that I've experienced natural childbirth one time. I don't want to experience it again, so I do have like the epidural, etc. So this is probably like a 3-hour window. Nick at this point is calling his parents, letting them know what's going on, because they have our other children. I'm just broken. I'm just crying. He's on the phone with our friend that's a doctor. I'm like letting some of my friends know what's going on and asking them to like pray for the situation, because like literally my husband, I, and our baby were at the hands of the hospital at this point. We were at the hands of my blood work, my urine, like everything, like the labs, like whatever they were testing, we were at the hands of. And we could not leave that hospital with our baby. Which as a parent is like, I don't even know how to explain that. Like, it's like our baby was healthy, we were healthy, but they were telling us we couldn't leave. And though I did understand protocol, as a parent, you're like, this is my child. Like, you know what I mean? So I'm not saying anything negative about the hospital. I feel like they did exactly what they were supposed to do in this situation. It just really sucked for me in this situation, because I knew that my baby wasn't in danger and that there was no reason for any of this to be going on. So we're there for about another 3 hours. At this point, we don't know if they're going to clear us to leave. We don't know if CPS is going to be called. We don't know if we have to stay another night so that they can monitor the baby for 72 hours. Like, we literally just don't know. So I'm sitting there and I'm just holding my baby, crying. I think I fell asleep a little bit because, like I said, I was so exhausted. But the phone rang and I answered it, and it was social services. And she was like, okay, Sarah, she was like, I've been down here with pharmaceutical for a long time, and we've gone through everything in your history. She was like, and pharmaceutical, this is the point right here that I want all of you pregnant women to hear, and I want you to take it as a warning, and I want you to stop doing this right now if you were doing this while pregnant. She said, we cannot rule out that this did not happen to you because of your craving for everything but the bagel seasoning. Y'all, I almost had CPS called into my home and was not allowed to leave the hospital with my baby because I craved everything but the bagel seasoning all throughout my pregnancy. Now, I think a long time ago I had heard that the poppy seeds and everything but the bagel seasoning could cause you to have a positive drug test. But I didn't really think much of it. And then I will say, when they first told us that my urine came back positive, I looked it up, and everything but the bagel seasoning popped up as like one of the things that could show up positive in a drug screening. And so I told them, I said, I literally eat everything but the bagel seasoning with like everything. I eat it for breakfast on bagels. I eat it for lunch with like my sandwiches. I eat the everything but the bagel hummus. I eat the pretzel crisps that have everything but the bagel seasoning. I was like, that's like my number one craving, and I probably eat it 4 or 5 times a day. And they said, they're like, yeah, usually though it shows up different. It doesn't show up as morphine. So like that was kind of like brushed to the wayside, and none of us thought that was the cause. But pharmaceutical disagreed and said, I think this is what caused it. If she was eating it in such a large quantity, it could cause this to happen. So I was like relieved in that moment, and I asked social services, I said, okay, so what does this mean? And they said, well, this means that you get to go home with your baby. We're just going to rule it as it was caused by everything but the bagel. Your OB is speaking highly of your character. Your pediatrician is speaking highly of your character. None of them see any red flags or any reason that we shouldn't allow you to go home with your baby. So we're just going to write this off and act like it's done. And in that moment, like, it was like such a breath of fresh air. And Nick and I looked at each other and we were like, then get us out of this hospital. Like, he like literally walked out to the nurse's station. He was like, we're going, like, give us our paperwork, get us the wheelchair, because in our hospital you have to be wheeled out in a wheelchair. Like, we're not staying any longer. Like, they just cleared us, get us out of here. My pediatrician even told me when I went for my baby's like 1 week checkup, she was like, I have never signed a release form for a patient faster than when social services called me and told me that you could be cleared. She was like, it was like instant, I got you out of there. She was like, because the whole thing was baffling to me. So she said that in her expert opinion, she cannot rule out that maybe the Unisom also had something to do with it, but pharmaceuticals said that it was everything but the bagel seasoning. So this is my PSA to any women who may be pregnant right now. If you're planning on having a hospital birth or going into the hospital at any point, stop eating everything but the bagel seasoning. Like, it's not worth it. Like, it's so good, I agree, it's amazing, but don't eat it, or don't eat it in an excessive quantity. I think my OB said that they're even telling patients to like stop eating it by so many weeks now because of what happened to me. But it was traumatic. It was a terrible experience. It took away a lot of the joy of like having my baby, and I do not want any other mamas to experience that. So I hope that this like helps any of you out there and none of you have to go through this. But thanks for listening to my story about how everything but the bagel seasoning caused me to test positive for drugs. It's still the craziest story. On the funny side of it, we are going to have a poppy themed first birthday for my daughter with the poppy flowers, just to laugh and look back on the crazy experience that we had, because honestly, for months I could not tell this story without crying, and I'm just to the point where I can like kind of like laugh about the fact that that happened to me, and that really was part of our story. But thank you guys for watching, and I hope that this was helpful.